Oh man, why is it every time there's a stream where somebody actually shows up, we get these things that just kind of happen off the grid? Um, I hope Jem reappears, but if he doesn't, I'm not going to be surprised because YouTube's notification system is pretty dreadful, especially if you're a smaller channel. Like they just will not tell people that you're streaming. So I'll try this again. If we get interrupted the second time, then I'll just stick up a video. Oh man, I tell you, what a week. We actually had a pretty solid opening there. Like I was going through just kind of the thing from yesterday where I saw this. Well, I guess we can do it again here, but that is always one of the biggest irritations about streams being interrupted, where you have to like repeat or restart and just begin again. Hope it doesn't happen the second time or third time or fourth time or however many times it takes. Um, so I go to the market probably twice a week on average, sometimes three times. I said before, there's like a homeless lady that I noticed parks in the front of the place in like the same spot, and has been there for at least a month now. And at first, when I the first time I saw the car, I didn't necessarily think it was like just someone in there because I saw it had like some pieces of cardboard boarded up on the back on the not trunk the the back door window, and then I saw a foot sticking out of there and like pressing up against the window from the passenger side. And I was like, okay, somebody's in there. Um, but that's just something I've been noticing that that person's been there for a while, and it's really it's interesting because most of there's not really anywhere else I go and frequent enough to notice something like that. Because I've said before, I've noticed where there've been um, tinted window cars parked in like the Starbucks parking lot in there, and like I'm not around there often enough to notice if they're moving or leaving or whatever. So maybe they are, maybe they're not. I'm not entirely sure. I just noticed that it's really not coincidental to see a bunch of cars that are all parked in the same like formation with the same type of tinting to their windows. Uh, but I go inside the market yesterday, which is not a an atypical thing for me. And after going there, I notice so they have this thing they do in these stores now where they basically close off, or I guess turn off the um entrance to the hygiene aisles like toothbrushes, shampoo, toothpaste, different stuff like that. And I thought this was so dumb because it's like you already have cameras to where if someone were to try and steal something, you could see it. But I just, said whatever. Because I mean, we're at a point, unfortunately, now where they can pretty much do whatever they want, and we'd have to acquiesce to it by virtue of just how excessive things are. But I walked over there and I saw this the teller, I guess the cashier, and I noticed that she's actually kind of attractive. Um, like I'd say, very nice looking, uh, and good long hair. Just anyway. So I, proceed like I would with anyone else that's been there. But I decided I wanted to kind of test something. So I I had a product I didn't get, which was some soap. I have soap. Soap is something that when I was a kid, my grandpa used to like buy in bulk because you know when you if you have a bunch of it, you don't have to like keep going to the store to get some more of it. Um, I decided to go back to the aisle and just kind of and getting this thing that I do. I don't necessarily need it per se because I have some already, but I can still use more of it. Um, I decided to go back to the aisle and just kind of see if I could s- start up some kind of dialogue with the cashier. So when I first showed up, I'm like, I have returned, kind of like as a gag, and then uh, they have these stickers that they put on your stuff to show that you've purchased it. And as she's like, taking my item out or checking me out, whatever, uh, or I guess performing the checkout, I'm like, oh, can you give me one of those really cool big stickers? Just like with this very like feigned enthusiasm over this thing. But she gives me it, and I notice it doesn't necessarily seem like she's irritated, and she's clearly not, because she has this other like coworker that she makes a kind of like a joke to about something in their aisle, but she's not really responding in a way that shows that she's actually entertained or having any more basic enjoyment of interacting with me than any other customer. Like no laugh, no giggle, no nothing, just all whatever basically. Um and I said, I really wish people were so like my we've already talked about how I feel about a lot of that relationship stuff. That's nothing we need to re relitigate or give a recap of. But I just think it's kind of sad that you have this, I don't know, like these interactions with someone where you're like trying to make them laugh, or at least like attempting to, because I people work these shifts, they get tired, they're bored, whatever. Um, Generally speaking, when I have had different jobs, and like the more comfortable I am with them, I try to make some humor out of it just to kind of like pass the time, whatever, not entirely seep into this depressing state. And I just thought it was really kind of, I was just disappointed that I didn't see her seem to express any kind of like enjoyment in our interaction. And like that's part of why I said I don't really talk to um, women that often anymore, unless it's someone I work with or someone at the store that I have to speak to get something checked out, because it just seems like everything is by the numbers. Like, okay, yeah, here's your product. And she didn't seem like tired or irritated or anything, but just it just seems like there's almost this invisible wall that exists between you and them, that when you speak to them, their mind is like entirely focused on just performing their basic duty. There's nothing else there. It's like it's just such a, I don't know, it's a way of, I'm trying to think if I've done that, because I've had a cashier position before, but I don't know, I feel like when customers have tried to kind of like make jokes, have a little bit of humor, whatever, I feel like I've been receptive to them even when I'm at my most tired. Like I know that one day when I was working at this retailer for it was like 12 to 8, might have even been 1 to 9 o'clock, if I remember my memory serving me right. But I remember it was for like basically the whole afternoon till the early evening. Um, I'll never forget that there was a guy who came in there and he was like, "Hey man," I was like, "How are you?" Just kind of like basic greeting. And then only after he identified himself as someone that had come in there earlier and said like, "Oh, I'm surprised you're still here," did I suddenly go, "Oh, wow," because like I forgot, by virtue of just being in front for so long, all these different people coming in, checking the product out, giving them the change, etc. It's like your mind, it doesn't necessarily wander, but you don't really get caught up on like the specifics of what did this person look like, what did they buy, have you seen them before? So all I'm saying is I did that yesterday because I wanted to see if my interactions with them had changed in any significant way, where I was like looking to see if maybe I could get this one to laugh, if they thought anything I said was kind of funny, and they just really didn't seem to be that enthused by it. Which you know, I mean, hey, you can't please everybody because we all have different personalities. But I don't know. I just was hoping there would be more of an enjoyment on her part. So that stuck with me. Yeah, it's hard. It really is. It's hard to stream. It's hard to do videos sometimes. Because I know in an abstract it just appears like, oh, it's the person sitting in front of a camera. But you'll be surprised. I've had a lot of Saturdays and Mondays too, where you'll have somewhere where there's either good internet or but someone's gonna like mess with you, which is what happened earlier, or you'll have somewhere where like for example, at the different Starbucks I've gone to, where their internet ranges from meh to horrible, and even if you don't have anyone messing with you, you still are interrupted by the by it acting the way that it does. But yeah, we all have I guess our own perceptions of what and who we are. I mean, I can't tell how many times when I was in school I had some classmate try to say that I was weird or you know, I don't know. I guess I gradually got to a point where maybe I just stopped caring. Like I always remember this one time when I was in like I think ninth grade and I had some classmates that were like getting together and I tried to interact with them, talk to them, whatever. And you had I don't remember specifically what set it off, but there was like one that didn't really like me, and they're like, "Oh, why can't you just leave us alone?" And then I think about how by the time I got to 12th grade, I was completely content with just during the break periods being alone or doing my own little thing because it just seemed as if there was like a sociable part of me that died in the sense that I have no problem with speaking to someone if there's a you know grander purpose behind it, like, hey, we're doing this fundraiser, or oh, we're trying to make this video, or just something like that. But as far as speaking for the sake of, oh, let's become friends, I just, again, there's every now and again there's someone that I'll attempt to do that with, but it's a lot less plentiful than it used to be. My efforts, like I always talk about, I have my one my best friend or whatever, and that's because that's someone that does the basic thing of at least trying to keep it going. Like so many times you'll have interactions with people that just die because the other side doesn't keep it as a continuous thing. You reach out to them repeatedly. I mean, I met a guy as recently as a month or two ago. He starts telling me about elements of his personal life, stuff that I wager some people in that server that he's in probably don't know. And I said, me and him maybe got off on the bad foot at first, but hey, it's cool if we're actually going to speak and talk to each other and kind of express ourselves in a more attempt at humanizing manner. And all of a sudden, I kid you not, for this whole like last I think 2 or 3 weeks, he just won't respond to me. And like I messaged him on two separate occasions. I see that he's online, but if I keep getting nothing back from that person, I'm just going to say forget it. I mean, like you can't keep reaching out to someone and then never having the other person show any desire to have that happen. And that's why we were talking about this woman and her whole like thing with her boyfriend and whatnot. Um, the one that was in the banana penalty, but my stance with that was simply, if you're trying to talk to this person but they're not responding back, you leave them alone. And like that's why I was so disgusted by the fact that I did this in July, and then August, September, October, she resurfaces, makes it seem like whatever stopped us before is gone, only for it to get in the way again. um and then I had this like random guy that appeared out of nowhere talking about you were were overzealous and a little I'm like, how? This is someone who I left alone. Like I wasn't bothering because we're no strangers to having random people online abruptly stop responding or speaking or whatever. So that wasn't anyone I was obsessed with. It was simply a matter of it was one thing for this person to cut it off months ago, but then to restart it, it's like why, But I don't know. I just feel like a lot of people waste things because sometimes I have the idea of wouldn't it be nice to go to a store and maybe you don't go there every day, but maybe you go there twice a week, three times a week. And when you go in there, you know all the employees' names, you know what position they have, maybe even what hours they're usually there, right? And after going there and speaking to these people and getting to know them and et cetera, sometimes when you're checking your stuff out or leaving the place, you're like, hey, how's your daughter been? How's your son been? How's your dad been? How's your mother been? Just have you been all right? How are you? Just I don't know. I think if like I've seen people express this theory before of how society would be so much better if people were just nicer to each other. Um, and I do believe that because I don't I just I'm not even trying to sound philosophical, but I've never believed that human beings were invented to hate each other and to despise each other and wish for this awful thing to happen. Like, of course, you meet people that you're not a fan of, you're not friends with, you're not friendly to, but unless you're working at the same place and going to the same school, generally speaking, you can get away from most of them. So to have this thing where some of us are just constantly seeing people we despise or don't like, and then others, seem to just be very happy. Um, Even if they're around someone they're not necessarily the biggest fan of, they still are, you know, relatively pleasant. I don't know. I just feel like all that stuff weighs you down after a while. Like I- we have people who do the whole internet psychiatrist thing, and I really don't like them because they always want to talk about this person mentally ill. But I believe a lot of times things like depression and anxiety are fueled by environment that like for example, a guy who grew up in the 60s or 70s didn't have to worry about, if he posts a video of himself online, people are going to copy the video and make fun of him with it for the rest of his life. Or uh, if he talks about how hard it is to get a date, he's going to be attacked by other men over the way. Just like you didn't see that stuff back then. But in the modern era, with all this cyberbullying and just the general nastiness that comes from everyone and everything being on social media, I think it is creating a lot of depression. I don't think if you were to take these people and stick them in other time periods, they would want to, just not be around anymore. They would just give up on everything. Because it really does feel like every time you turn your back, you've got someone who's trying to put you down. Oh, I don't like what you're wearing. I don't like what it, whatever. Like I don't know. It's just this really like toxic environment that you get tired of. And sometimes you can't escape it. Sometimes you're living with that person. Sometimes you're forced to be around them because of circumstance. Um, and it's hard to survive that month after month. It is because I know from experience, it's not enjoyable being around someone that tries to make you feel bad about yourself or that you don't even want to speak to that much because you know that if you talk to them long enough you'll say something and they'll get upset with you and it'll start an even bigger problem. Just this really like explosive stuff, right? I remember I told this tale of how I was writing this script about this guy who wanted to have a family, and we established there's like a multiverse in this story. And he finds out that he has a daughter in another timeline, and he's like really excited to meet her because this is he's getting what he wants. He wanted to have a family, and there exists remnants of it in this other period. And when he goes there, he finds out that she's using his powers for evil, and is like one of like the worst villain or plague on humanity that you've seen any in recent times. And it's like this complete, because I try to explain, I like it when you take something, give it to the person, and it's ironic, right? So he gets what he wants in terms of having family, but it is the complete opposite of what he wants because of what she has turned into, or what she is rather. um and I thought that would be interesting to just kind of like play off the idea of you of getting what you want, but then still like not actually getting it. Like you get it in the most like abstract sense. It would be like if I said this person is going to win the lottery, and you're like, yes, and then you find out that you're only going to get like $10 or something. Just completely defeats the purpose of winning, right? Because it's the idea behind winning it is, oh, you have a whole bunch of money, but if you're only getting a little bit of money, then there's really it's like a very minor victory. Its meaning is effectively rendered null and void. Now there's a lot of stuff I would like to do, like, and that's always one of the few things that keeps me going. I can have some days where I just feel totally and utterly miserable, right? Like just depressed, sad, etc. Um, why me? I had that as recently as yesterday, which was what actually made me kind of feel even more bad, because it's like that was one of only a few days a week where I got off. So on a day where you're not working, you would, like, I don't know. I always visualize that days where I wouldn't have to go to some job. I would probably try to like relax, rest, get some enjoyment from just kind of sitting around for a little bit. And you didn't really see that yesterday. There was a lot of errands, a lot of driving around, a lot of little tasks that needed to be completed. And like I said, those are the types of things that kind of just they wear on you after a while. But yeah, I try to still, in any other terms, be optimistic about the future. Like I don't come on here and play the little sugarcoat fairy tale happy ending stuff these people do. Like I'll be the first one to tell you, you know, I think this is the biggest I'll get on this site. I'll get a few hundred views on a video here and there. Maybe there'll be one a year that gets like 1K, whatever. But that's my peak. That's my maximum. And I'm content with that so long as I have a job somewhere else, because I can live with not making anything or much at all off of here. It doesn't it bothers me significantly less if I have gainful employment, which I've so far had for the now. Again, I don't think I'm going to have that for any continuous period, because we've talked before about how a lot of jobs do the hire to fire thing, and like after the first month, you got to make sure that just kind of like be mindful of how they start acting. Um, but I'm hoping that things remain as they are, relative to me having a position. As long as that's in place, you will not see me complain one bit about whatever I make off a year, because it doesn't matter. It's second fiddle. But going beyond that, I tell you all the time, I don't think that woman stuff is going to get any better. I think in a hypothetical where I had like more views, more subscribers, you might start seeing some of the gold digger types, the Johnny come latelys, the ones that just show up to try and get something out of you to see if they can squeeze some pennies out of you as well. But as far as finding a fulfilling, I don't even like saying relationship anymore with a woman, I don't buy it. Mm. And again, I'm honest about that. I look at these patterns, I say, hey, this stuff doesn't really seem like it's getting any better. Um, some things are right, like the job stuff. I felt very good when I did the 3 parts of the Johnson documentary. I was on cloud nine because I had wanted to do at least one, documentary on a president for a long time, and the thing was always like, why am I going to put all this effort into a video and only get like 10 views? And they performed a lot better than I thought they would. Uh, but I as far as the whole angle of like just so much effort for so little, breaking them down into part one, two, three, four, five, like that makes it a lot more feasible for me internally because at that point you can sort of just, I mean, you can if any pieces or parts you didn't do, you can just come back and do later. You can return to it at another point and just sort of go from there. But I spoke to Jim and I was telling him about how I want to do one on Roosevelt and how next year is going to be the centennial for Carter and Bush, and how I there's one book on Carter I still want to get to like fully do the whole thing. I've got two on Roosevelt. I have the Gene Edward Smith 2007 um, book, which is considered one of the best biographies of him, and the Conrad Black book, which is not as well received, but still pretty It's I think I've been told it's like the longest singular biography of an American president ever at 1,000 pages. You certainly can feel it. But again, it's like I don't want um what's a way of putting it? I'm not trying to be this toxic, upsetting thing that just comes around and tells you how bad everything is and whatnot. There's some stuff I like that's happening. There's some stuff I don't, and sometimes it feels like the things that are just too much start to kind of pile up on you, right? And I've talked like I named the other stream one step forward, one step back, and that was me talking about how the problem with a lot of these modern jobs is they give people part-time hours, and they do this mainly because they don't care. But it's like, if you even if you were to be charitable and say they're operating on an assumption that, hey, this person can survive off of this, um you really can't. I mean, for example, if I work 4 hours per day, that's like, and then not even per day because they usually give you like 2 days a week, 1 day a week, that's like $60. I go to the store and buy some groceries, or if I go to get some gas, very easily that whole money is just gone. Like, I mentioned before, California's gas is more expensive than any other state. So that's why it's hilarious that they try to play this angle up of like, oh, so helpful. But again, that's the type of stuff where I'm not too excited about it because it at that point it seems like a pyramid scheme. You are, and not in the sense that like the job is benefiting from, but like, look at it this way: you make $60 a day, but you're only working 2 days a week, so it's like 120. It's $60 to get all your stuff at the market, or maybe like 50-40 if you don't get certain drinks, if you don't get certain, just like maybe you can find ways to cut corners. But then it's definitely 60 to get like a full tank of gas. I'm telling you, it is very difficult to not have this stuff just be as overwhelming as it is. And I do want to do more edited stuff. It's just harder to do that when you're because like the way days for me tend to work is I'll examine, okay, it's 12, 1, 2. I think I have enough hours to finish writing this script and then, gathering up whatever stuff I need to make the video and record it because there's a whole like, series of things you have to do to make sure it's done. But then I'll sit back and I'll go, wait a second, I don't think I have enough time to do this part or this portion or do this or that, and that's what causes me to kind of say, okay, I need to like try to get around to this in the coming days. Like I had a mission, I said I want to do, part 4 of the documentary, and I have that audio completed. I have to edit it. But editing could take anywhere from 2 hours, 3 hours, especially if you're talking about an hour-long video. So it really just comes down to I have to sit back, open up my Google Docs, and start from the beginning. Or sometimes I start from the end. That I prefer starting from the end sometimes because at least when I do it that way, it's like, wow, I actually just did the whole conclusion of this. When we put the opening part, it's like, yeah, it's like like I guess when I do it backwards, it for me it still works because you're kind of like making sure that all the parts are flowing together. Whereas I do think if you start from the beginning, you might have a higher chance of neglecting some part or leaving something out. Because I had to do like 6 different takes for part 4 because there were just little pieces of stuff I had either forgotten to write or didn't have in there as clearly as I thought, or maybe there's a typo. Because sometimes I don't catch typos until as I'm reading, I'm like, oh, this is not written correctly. Let me, you know. But yeah, I'm trying. I really am. Uh, and again, I'm optimistic when it comes to certain things. Like I do think I could probably, if I only did the Johnson one, finish it in its entirety by the end of next month. But again, that's assuming that I like don't do anything else, and I my mind is kind of set up to where at worst I want to take on at least 2 at once. Maybe. Yeah, just to feel like I'm progressing on something else as well. I don't know. I want to put all my eggs in one basket. I tell you, it's incredible, isn't it? Just the amount of stuff you can do and like still have someone calling you lazy. Because like during the period where I didn't have a job for like what was that 3 years back to back, I still put up stuff on here, and like I mean, I guess look at it like this: a lot of the major news channels on this site, they have other people that do things for them. Like they have, like if you go to TYT for example, they have a whole set of staff and whatnot. Um, when you're talking about some of the other lesser channels, and I say lesser, I'm not talking about lower in quality, but just like people that don't have 5 million subs. With them, they have people that edit stuff for them. So when I do something, I have to do all of it at all times. I have to edit the video. I have to, record it. I if there's a script, I write it. Like this is entirely me. I don't know. I just hate when someone tries to shame you for having a hobby. Like when people go out to the movies to go see a film, or when they go hiking, I don't say, "Well, are you going to make anything off of this?" I don't get them, man. It's weird. Yeah, I don't think Jem is going to reappear. That's pretty unfortunate. He might have actually been busy while I was streaming because he wrote like one comment and then just after that nothing. So he might have already been pulled away by something. Oh man. Sometimes I really do just marvel at how much stuff I actually like want to do. Like it almost, I don't want to say feels daunting, but because if you do it like piece by piece, it's not as bad. But just kind of thinking it over, like wow, I want to make this, and eventually I want to make that. Just when you remind yourself you want to do it in that way. Man, I remember the first time I ever like got the idea to do a documentary. I said, "Oh, I remember I went on online just like typing stuff in because there are a lot of people, and I've said before, most people, most historical figures, most contemporary figures don't have books about them. So a lot of times when you like, if I were to make a documentary on an actor, for example, just any old actor, even one that's been around for like 20 plus years, like I don't know, Michael Keaton or something, I still would have to mostly rely on online sources to get information about them. I still would have to go look up old reviews. What do people think of this movie? Old interviews. Why were you in this movie? Um, so it's a lot more time consuming because it's not all the information isn't gathered in one place. That's why back when I used to edit WikiPiss, I was so disgusted. One of the users was like trying to make me feel bad for using. He was like, "You just go on Google and it's like, dude, most of the people I edit are current modern day politicians, and almost none of them have any books about them unless it's a memoir. So it's just kind of irritating when you understand that like most of this stuff is on a bell curve. Like, no, you can't do this as much as you think you can. Oh man, I wish people wrote about modern people more often. Like I would love for somebody to write a full scale biography of Jesse Jackson, but he hasn't had a full scale biography since what, the '90s, early 2000s, one that's very outdated. I mean, it's still good for information up to that point, but since then, not really. I'd love for someone to write a full scale book about Jim Carrey or who's somebody else that's been around for a while. Um, I don't know. I'm just saying that I wish more books were written. I wish more people read. I wish that that took place, but we don't see it. So a lot of times when you want to make one of these, you have to look for not print sources. You have to do a lot of digging, right? You got to look for interviews. You have to look for, I mean, and sometimes the interviews aren't even ones that were written in print. Sometimes you'll just go on YouTube and somebody will have some old, interview from like 83, 93 with the person where they're just explaining stuff. But outside of that, you don't really have all the information just in one place, which is why doing a historical figure is a lot more appealing than a contemporary person. Like I, for example, could say I think Joe Manchin is one of the most important senators of the last at least 10 years. For all of his different votes that have been significant in terms of like moving the paradigm and whatnot. But for me to prove that, I'm gonna have to get some print sources because there hasn't really been much written on him in any professional way. Like you probably, I'm sure when people do their inevitable Biden biographies, you'll probably see some portions in there about him. Like he'll get mentioned in a sentence or two. But as far as like a whole book about, no, you're not going to see that for a while, if ever. Him and Collins and Murkowski, the people who have significant votes as senators, but who who have been in there for a while, like certainly long enough for some, for someone to theoretically have written one on them. They just don't come up that often. Oh man. I had a portion of the story where so the version of the so like what I mentioned earlier about there was a story where there was like this alternate timeline where this man had a kid and the kid used his powers for evil. I had a portion where you find out that the version of him from her timeline is deceased because after he found out what she was doing, he just ended it all. Um, and I try to establish that he, following the passing of several people that he cared about, became much more reclusive and kind of because I've always had this belief that depression doesn't just appear out of the clear blue sky one day. It's like a bunch of stuff just kind of like builds on top of each other. Like, you know, this person just passed. You got to pay for this. Oh, this person just passed. This other person just passed. You know, good luck getting a job. I mean, just all that stuff together, building, to where you just can't take it anymore. You're like, this is not getting any better. It's just like a gradual decline. So it's one of those things. That's one of the reasons I was always so attracted to Ted Kennedy's story because you have this senator who, by virtue of really nepotism, gets his seat at a very young age, and he's able to, kind of sit there for a few years, dealing with the passing of both of his brothers, and then suddenly, he has this event happen with Chappaquiddick that basically looms over him for the next 10 or so years, as he's still talked about as like the premier Democrat, as the one that's going to, bring them back to their glory days and victory. But he waits too long. He gets upstaged by Carter, and they have this rivalry for the whole 4 years that this man is in office. That culminates in this primary challenge that, even though it doesn't succeed, is still seen as one of the reasons why Carter lost in a landslide to Reagan. Um, and he has to then deal with the aftermath of that by having his party in the minority, and just it's a fascinating arc, like just from even just a storytelling perspective of this man that has all this stuff like thrust on him but just can't live up to it ever, like just always is second fiddle to somebody else, always in some kind of backwards position. He's really interesting. Like even without the legislative victories, because I do believe he was the most significant senator in modern times, certainly of the last like 50 years. But even without the legislative stuff, he still is a fascinating figure. Um, and he is someone I think of when I imagine like the rise and fall, like all the various pitfalls that you have, and just being able to keep coming back from it. So he's definitely someone I'd be interested in doing one of these on. Although I don't know when I would even get around to him. I mean, between I don't know. It's I just have to map out a timetable or some kind of like order of doing this stuff, which I've tried to do before, um, but it's not as simple. I think what's going to probably end up happening is after I do more of the Johnson one, all the other ones are probably going to be like part one of this, part one of that, part one of this, just like starting each one, right? And then coming back to them after that. So you can always feel like you're progressing a little bit, even if it's only just a little bit. But no, he is he will always be one of the most fascinating historical figures for me, just by virtue of his real life triumphs and tragedies. And I do hope that at some point we get like a renaissance. He had about two or three different new biographies come out in the last I think 3 or 4 years. So there have been discussions and conversations about him, but just in the new political landscape, you really don't see him getting mentioned that often, which is very jarring because many of the people that were in the Senate when he was there are still there. They just don't talk about him. Um, like it's really fascinating how like all of these different historical figures just kind of like fade away from people just kind of like not mentioning them ever. Even now, you don't really see many people talking about McCain. Like they'll mention him when they want to, bash Trump, but as far as oh, he did the Feingold McCain Act, they don't bring that up that often. It's really sad. So many of these historical figures, especially like the more modern ones, they don't really get brought up that often, even by people like you would think if you're, you know, I don't know, a Republican from Arizona, you're going to bring up Goldwater, you're going to bring up McCain. Those are your states. I don't want to. What's a good way of saying it? Your state's representatives, most memorable members of Congress. I mean, it's just one of those things where I can call it a nitpick, but I really do believe when they talk about legacy, it's just you see how little it matters when they don't get brought up or mentioned by the contemporaries, which is a shame too, because many of these same figures will reappear in different like biographies that someone pushes out, and then like, oh yeah, I remember this person, but between now and then they don't bring them up that often. I can remember the last time I saw a Republican bring up Eisenhower. I know Arnold did an interview where he mentioned him, and Nixon, but this whole like primary cycle, the only one they talk about from the former Republicans, besides uh, Trump, obviously, because he's running for another term, really is just Reagan, because they had their debate at his library, and he's the one that has like the high approval rating with regular people that don't know any better. Um, I know that Ramaswamy came to the Nixon library and gave a speech, and he brought him up during some interview, and I think I heard Bush at one point, but they really just don't mention anyone else, which I find sad because Nixon was a very important president. Honestly, out of all the ones after Eisenhower, he probably of any of the Republicans did the most I liked. So it does me no joy to see him get completely overshadowed by Reagan. That's not a victory for me. I don't even know how we would do one on him. You probably would go. I'd say part one for Nixon would be everything before the vice presidency, maybe everything before he is in the Senate, and then you can merge the Senate and the vice presidency together. You can have the Senate years, which is like not even I don't even think it was a full term, and then have the vice presidency's 8 years just kind of like merged into one big video, and then you can put 1960 presidential campaign with the gubernatorial campaign from 1962, and then have the rest of his, like pre-presidency years. At that point, it's only like six, or excuse me, eight, merged together. Because I really can't think of much of what he did. And I haven't read any of the biographies recently, so I'll probably have to like spruce myself up in terms of knowledge. But I can't really think of what he did after losing the governorship to Pat Brown. I know that he was, this is my last press conference, but like my mind draws a blank. Like it's 6 years of nothing, and I'm sure something happened. I know that he did to some extent campaign for the Republicans in the '64 election, and he distanced himself from Goldwater and the rest of them because he believed Johnson could have beat Jesus that year. But as far as just like what he was doing in that like 6 year period in between, I don't know. It's a real mystery. But no, he's someone that I definitely am very interested in doing. Um, I mean, hey, I would be remiss to not talk about extensively the only president born in my home state. So, like I said, there's a lot of stuff. You just have to sit back, organize it, pick out which pieces, what parts, and then go from there. It's time consuming, but I like history, and I like that even if people don't want to read books, they can watch a video and get the same information, even if it's however many hours long, because these people were alive for and did a lot of stuff. So you have to go over all of it. Mm. I'm telling you, I do sometimes like sit back and go, man, wouldn't it be so cool if we had just like this hypothetical? Guys, I said before, like I always envisioned all the modern ones, and when I say modern, I'm talking about all the ones after Hoover. I would do, and each one would have part one, part two, part three, part four, part five. And then after doing it piece by piece, I could merge all of it, or at least most of it, into then like three separate videos that are done based like on a, let's go way of putting it, on the basis of that period of their life. So like for Johnson, if I'm doing a trilogy with him, part one is the years of him just in Texas in the House. Then part two is the Senate years, the vice presidency, and then part three is the presidency itself, which probably would be the longest one of any of the three of them. But you get the idea that it would there's a narrative reason for splitting them like that. Whereas I'm doing it the way I do it now because I just want to feel like I'm progressing, even if I don't have it entirely finished. So I really would like to do FDR. He's the one I want to do probably the most of anyone besides Johnson. It's just that I haven't really been able to finish writing the script because working up at this place. I'll try to do some more of it today. Um, but yeah, I would like to do more of these. It's just a matter of having all the right stuff and being able to put everything in one place. But as I've said before, there no matter how much I distract myself with the various projects I want to do or little, I do seek companionship, and that was one of the reasons why I was on these different websites. I never used any of those stupid pay for dating sites because I'm not about to throw a bunch of money over talking to some woman. But I just think it's really sad that they as a group have become so tainted for me that I couldn't imagine actually being with one of them. Like I can see one of them you talk to for a little bit, but as far as just again an actual relationship, I can't see it. I don't, because we've already established that they will say all types of things, no matter how overtly erotic it is, just to play with you, basically, not to go anywhere, not to actually do anything. Yeah. Oh man. This is actually how far I was. I was about halfway through. I'd mostly been focusing on the first 70 or so pages because that's how I wanted to split it, where it's like every four chapters would be, you know, one portion of the video, or I guess one part of the series. So altogether, you'd probably have like six, seven, 8 parts. It's I don't know. I always feel like I just don't have enough. And when I say enough, I just mean in terms of like interactions with people, support. It just like I always tell those that actually do support this stuff that I appreciate them, right? Um, but besides that, it's just whatever. There's always a certain like just absentness that they have. And you'll be surprised how much people can rationalize things to themselves. Like if you if you get a book for $10, then you should be able to pay for thousands of whatever the hell. I mean, it's really impressive, just the logic of these people. It's sad too because it's like you'll go months without even getting yourself anything. Like you know, just for what it's worth, I got this bag from the Johnson Library, and it's like that's probably the first. I mean, I haven't gotten the bag since probably like I'd say February, March, right when I got my computer bag. But it's like you get this bag that's like 30 something bucks, and this person like tries to throw it back in your face that you got. It's nuts, man. It's really crazy. So what they're telling you is just don't ever get anything for your enjoyment ever. Like don't get any books, right? Don't get any $5, $10 books online. Don't get any inexpensive bags. Don't just if you're struggling in any financial way, don't ever get anything worth any enjoyment ever. That is what they are conveying to you. And I just find it so sad because it's like, so many times during the week you're working some job, right? You're doing stuff you probably would rather not be doing. But you know that when your shift is over, you get to come home, you get to watch a movie, you get to just, do something that you like. And I just hate that you're supposed to feel bad for that. But that's the lunacy that we live with, unfortunately. So people are always trying to make you feel, you know, not good over anything. So I will stream again, most likely on Monday. It's just been a crazy week, and there's always every time it seems like there's little signs that things are going to get better. There's just an avalanche waiting to happen. So thanks for showing up, and have a good rest of your Saturday.